My name is Nate Halupka. I work with the North Carolina Pandemic Recovery Office. So thank you for joining us. It looks like we have a few more people coming on, so we're going to take just a couple seconds to make sure that we have everybody up and ready to go. Again, we appreciate everybody that's in attendance today. So the content that we're going to cover today is the North Carolina government distribution of the Corona Relief Funds. We've received some additional guidance, and today we're going to be talking, we'll go through kind of the content that we're going to be going, but this is a little bit different than the previous presentation that we had. Lisa, if you'll select the next slide. All right, so today in the presentation, the areas that we're going to cover, we're not going to cover the entire gambit of what the local governments and the county governments are going to address. Today we're going to address some overview of the laws, funding allocations, some GASB accounting standards, new guidance on the use of funds, and some reporting requirements. You can go to the next slide. All right, so just as a little bit of information, looking back at the beginning, the CARES Act was passed back in March 27th of 2020. That was an appropriation in North Carolina of $7.6 billion and $13 billion in loans. North Carolina took that and through Session Law 2020-4, which the governor signed on May 4th, appropriated the Corona Relief Funds. Since then, we've been receiving regular guidance from the U.S. Treasury. That's been on April the 4th, May the 4th, 28th, and we recently received some this past week on the 24th. So today we're going to go over a little bit of that information, as well as going through kind of how the appropriations that's going forward to the counties is evolved over time, and just to help keep you up to date. If you can go to the next slide. Okay, so if you remember back, the original apportionment that went out to the counties was $150 million total, and that went out to the counties directly, and then that apportionment was made to the counties based on the population base, and there was some discussion. So that was originally $150 million. Recently, House Bill 1023 is apportioning an additional $150 million, which brings the total up to $300 million. So that means that the counties, essentially the amounts that you've received are going to be doubled. We'll go into a little more depth about what that looks like in your individual counties. One of the new provisions that's within House Bill 1023 is that the counties now must allocate at least 25% of the total funds allocated to the counties to the municipalities. So this is the total amount. I don't want you to worry if to date you haven't apportioned any to municipalities. Certainly there's additional funds there, and you'll be able to hit that 25% to the municipalities. This requirement to municipalities will also include a revision of the plan. All the different counties across the state have already submitted a plan. Certainly we're going to give you the chance without penalty, and we need you to update the plans that have been sent on. And this time it just needs to make sure that it includes the provision for the municipalities as it goes forward. If the municipalities don't develop their plan, they must return the funds to the county. The county can then choose how to redistribute those, but there is that 25% requirement that's in there, so that the 25% total goes to municipalities within each particular county. You'll go to the next slide. The use of these funds are subject to the guidance that's been released to the Treasury. So this is the guidance that we're getting from the Treasury. So it's, the intent is that the counties are still the keepers of the funds. They're the ones that are ultimately required to keep accountability of the funds. The pass-through information and the funds to the municipalities. It is the counties that are responsible for making sure that the municipalities follow the guidance that comes out of the Treasury's office and the FAQs through there. Some of the things have not changed, so the funds still must be spent through December 30th, 2020. They all still must be within those same core eligibility buckets, as you've heard, the COVID-related expenses. And they're subject to recoupment if spent on ineligible items. So we have been regularly developing the FAQs per the Treasury guidance to make sure that we give you the most updated information possible. It's nobody's intent. I'm sure it's not yours. It's not our intent, and certainly not the municipalities. Everybody wants to make sure that we're spending the funds in the correct ways. If there's questions about those, it's appropriate for the counties to reach out to our office. So certainly if you have a question about that, reach out to our office. But again, it is the county's duty, it's the county's responsibility to ensure that the municipalities are spending it correctly. If you can go on to the next screen. All right, so as I said before, this is pretty small print here, but certainly I want to remind you that everything that we're presenting today, you'll be able to catch that online. If there's questions that come up throughout this, you'll be able to ask those in the text box alongside. The questions that you may have about how much funds the municipalities may be receiving, that 25%, this helps to break that down. All of this information along with the presentation will be in there also. So if you can go to the next slide. All right, so the next portion, we've received some information from the Department of the State Treasury. Susan McCullen thankfully provided us some good information. Lisa Outlaw within the NC Pro office is going to relay a lot of this information. If there's additional questions, certainly we'll be able to reach out and provide updated information. And Susan's given us a lot of good guidance with this. So without further ado, Lisa Outlaw, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Lisa Outlaw, and I'm going to be presenting two parts of this presentation. The first one is the CARES GASB accounting standards, and then later on in the presentation, you'll hear from me again about the reporting requirements. So the CARES GASB accounting standards are as follows. The CARES Act funds should be budgeted and accounted for in a special revenue fund per the North Carolina General Statutes 159-26B2. The GASB issued an exposure draft on June 9, 2020, addressing revenue and reporting questions related to the coronavirus relief funds. And the board should adopt the final language as of today, June 30th. Once this is adopted, please make sure you go out to the North Carolina Department of Treasury's website, because they will be updating their original guidance after the adoption. The CRF funds are not grants, but other financial assistance that were allocated based on the broad population formulas. GASB has determined that these funds are voluntary exchange transactions with an eligibility requirement. And an eligibility requirement affects revenue recognition. So the big key points to learn is, if you have not incurred expenditures yet in this particular fiscal year and you have this as revenue, it is really treated as a liability until an expenditure occurs. So next, we have resources, again, that are received. The funds that are received are considered liabilities until COVID expenditures are incurred. When these eligibility requirements are met, only then can the revenue be recognized. CARES revenues and eligible expenses are not extraordinary or special items. In business type activities in the enterprise funds, report revenues as non-operating revenues. And remember, unspent coronavirus relief funds should be reported as liabilities as of June 30th if there are no incurred expenditures, and this should be reported as liabilities in the statement of net position and balance sheet. Because these funds are required to be reported in the special fund, until the local governments have considered this to be a expenditure, again, it must be reported as a liability. Samantha, I do know that Susan is with us, and does she have any more comments that she wants the hearers to understand about this section?
She just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that the Treasurer's Office issued their guidance prior to the GASB exposure draft being issued, and that they will be revising it as needed once the exposure draft is finalized.
And the exposure draft probably should be finalized today on June 30th. After that adoption, please go out to the website and get the updated guidance. Now I will be turning this over to Lisa Fox for more information on how you should use the funds.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Lisa Fox with NC Pro, the other Lisa. And I'll be covering today some of the guidance for allowable uses of funds, including an update that was recently made in the June 24th guidance, which changed some of the use of funds for substantially dedicated employees. So beginning there, a substantially dedicated employee is if an employee's time is less than 50% dedicated to COVID-19 activities, then they're not eligible for CRF funds. However, if greater than 50% of that employee's time is dedicated to COVID-19 activities, then 100% of the substantially dedicated employee's payroll is covered by CRF funds. So this is the change in guidance that just came out. Previously, only the time that was spent on COVID-19 activities could be covered. Now, 100% of that particular employee's payroll can be covered, which includes salary, fringe benefits, overtime, and hazard pay. So that's the main change that we want to highlight for you today. As previously, counties are responsible for documenting the dedication, the time dedication, and the duties and the responsibilities of that employee in order to report back. So to clarify also on public health and public safety administrative positions, about which we've had some questions, unlike public health and public safety positions writ large, administrative positions are not presumed to be substantially dedicated. Next slide, please. So if administrative staff are repurposed to a substantially different use, that is allowable. If you've added additional administration positions to handle calls or paperwork related to COVID, that is also allowable. But administrative costs cannot be used, or you cannot use the federally approved indirect cost allocation for that purpose. It must have a direct link to COVID-19, must be an increase over previously budgeted amounts for that activity, and be limited to what is necessary to respond to the COVID emergency. And then moving here to talk about the use of funds for the leave that was allowed in the Family First Coronavirus Relief Act. If a county or municipality has formally adopted the leave in the Family First Coronavirus Relief Act, then you may be able to use funds to provide up to 80 hours per employee of sick leave at that employee's regular rate, up to 80 hours of 2/3 rate pay for employees who are caring for someone who's in quarantine or who have to take care of a child because of issues with childcare or because of school closure, and up to 10 weeks of extended family medical leave at 2/3 rate, also to take care of a child because of a school closure or a daycare closure. Next slide. Some other allowable uses of funds. You may be able to use these funds for marketing and tourism if that marketing and publication is related to reopening of tourist attractions, or, for example, beaches or parks, or if you would like to publicize some of the steps that you've taken to ensure that people visiting your sites have a safe experience. You may also be able to use these funds for grants and loans to businesses, nonprofits, and individuals, showing a direct link to COVID-19 effects. For example, business closures, businesses that were required to close because of COVID-19. I do want to highlight that there is a difference between grants and loans. So loans that are not issued or repaid, issued by December 30th or repaid after December 30th must be returned to the state. Grants do not require payback of funds. Loans do require the payback of unused funds, including interest and principal. Next slide.
Okay.
And then I'll turn it back over to Lisa Outlaw to talk about the reporting requirements.
All right, thank you, Lisa. Okay, so this is Lisa Outlaw again, and I'm going to be talking to you about reporting requirements associated with the coronavirus relief funds. So on June 24th, I sent emails to all of you to communicate your county's unique download link and upload link. Please retain this email for future reference. You will need to use these 2 links to send and receive information to and from the NC Pro office. Because each link provided is specific to your county, you should only share these links with your subrecipients. So you are allowed to share them with your municipalities and any other subrecipients for your county. If you did not receive your upload and download link, please send an email to lisa.outlaw@osbm.nc.gov. Within the subject of your email, write that you need an upload and download link. Within the body of the email, provide your county name, municipality, or other recipient name, and I will send you your secured links. Please do not email your documentation to me or any other NC Pro email directly. Email transmission is not secure. However, the links provided to you will allow you to securely transmit information to NC Pro. Which leads me to explain the NC Pro expenditure reporting process. NC Pro created 8 easy steps to follow to receive your coronavirus relief funds allotment and report on the use of funds. Steps 5 through 8 are the only steps relevant to local government. Steps 1 through 4 are applicable to nonprofits and hospitals. So I will only cover steps 5 through 8 within this presentation. In step 5, NC Pro transfer funds to your entity. We will do this again with the new allotment that came out of House Bill 1023. In step 6 requires the county, municipalities, or other recipients to send proof of use of funds to NC Pro on a monthly basis. Step 7 requires you to submit your final report of accomplishments to NC Pro using attachment F and use all funds or return unspent funds to NC Pro by December 30th, 2020. Step 8 requires you to comply with NC Pro audit requests throughout this process and even after December 30th to fulfill federal and state audit requirements. Now, NC Pro utilizes 12 documents within its reporting process. The counties, municipalities, and subrecipients are only required to submit 3 of the 12 documents. When you use the download link to access your documents, you will note that we provided you with a long file name that contains numbers at the beginning of each document. Please do not rename these documents when completing these forms. We have purposely named each document to make it easier for our data collection tool to process your information quickly and seamlessly. If you rename the document, this will make it difficult for NC Pro to track submissions from your entity. We will cover these documents in detail in the next few slides. For tracking purposes, the NC Pro office assigned each county receiving funds with an agreement number. This number corresponds with the same number assigned to local government allotments in Session Law 2020-4. Be sure to include your agreement number within the file name of all documents submitted to NC Pro. The agreement number is the number assigned to your county for tracking purposes. When your county further distributes funds to the municipalities and other subrecipients, the NC Pro office will need each municipality and subrecipient to complete the required attachments using the county's assigned agreement number. Since the counties must distribute 25% of the funds to the municipalities are considered subrecipients. I want to briefly explain the difference between a subrecipient versus a contractor. This is important because subrecipients are required to submit the same attachments to NC Pro as the counties. A subrecipient may determine who may be eligible to receive assistance under the Coronavirus Relief Funds Act. A subrecipient's performance is measured based on program objectives. A subrecipient is responsible for making decisions about the program. A subrecipient is responsible for complying with the program requirements, and a subrecipient uses the coronavirus relief funds to carry out a program for a public purpose, as opposed to providing goods or services for the benefit of local government. A contractor provides goods and services within its normal business operations, and it provides similar goods or services to many different purchasers. A contractor normally operates in a competitive environment and provides goods or services that are necessary to the primary activities of the local government entities. A perfect example of a contractor in this scenario is a supplier of personal protective equipment. A contractor is not subject to the compliance requirements of the federal or state program, which in this case is the CARES Act or Session Law 2020-4 or House Bill 1023. Although similar requirements may apply to a contractor for other reasons. Since you have a subrecipient relationship with the municipalities and possibly other subrecipients, the municipalities and the other subrecipients are also responsible for submitting Attachment C1, Attachment C2, and Attachment F to the NC Pro office. These entities are also responsible for submitting the documentation using the county's assigned agreement number with a sequentially assigned unique identifier appended to the end of the agreement number for tracking purposes. See an example of a unique identifier for 3 municipalities. If your agreement number is 02-01, if that was given to a county, and that county had 3 municipalities or 3 different other subrecipients, your agreement number or the county's agreement number is demonstrated on this slide in yellow, and the unique identifier that would have been assigned to the other subrecipients are in blue. Be sure the subrecipients include their unique identifier at the beginning of each file name of all documents submitted to NC Pro for tracking purposes. Without this number, it would be difficult for our office to process documentation. You should share your upload and download links with your municipalities and any other subrecipients to ensure that they use and that they send the required documentation to NC Pro. Attachment C1 requests that you provide a descriptive summary of how the coronavirus relief funds were used and any deliverables or progress made against the objectives and the expected outcomes. In summary, this document should provide a narrative that explains your actual accomplishments to assist NC Pro with determining how your county or municipality used the funds to help North Carolina recover from the coronavirus pandemic. Attachment C2 is a monthly report of expenditures for recipients. That would be the counties and subrecipients, the municipalities. Now, I will briefly explain the cost categories in this report to give you an example of the NC Pro, the data elements and the cost categories required by NC Pro. However, it is preferred that you use this same information or collect the same information from your accounting system and submit it to NC Pro in the same manner that you submitted to the local government commissions and ultimately the North Carolina Department of Treasury. The cost categories are as follows. In attachment C2, we are asking for detailed expenditure information that reports your employee expenses, your contract labor expenses, other services that you may have had to pay as a result of the coronavirus, like increased expenses on utilities, telephones, data lines, subcontract expenses, any construction or maintenance for implementing social distancing efforts, any goods expenses, which would be purchases of personal protective equipment, and any other equipment expenses and other expenses that are not listed within the first 6 categories. In addition to that, we are also requesting that whatever document you choose to submit from your accounting system, that the date of the expenditure, the date that it occurred, is listed. If you pay for an employee, the name of the employee, vendor, or contractor, we would like that listed. The unique ID used to identify that employee, contractor, or goods or service, like an ID. The description of the services rendered or purchased, and any unique invoice IDs. The number of monthly hours worked by an employee or the total invoice amounts. Any actual hours dedicated to the COVID relief efforts, and then any COVID-related hours, so that we could determine if that employee worked over 50% or not to COVID relief efforts. In order to receive this information and process it, we ask that any report submitted, if you don't use the attachment C2 document that we provide to you, that you submit the report in a Microsoft Excel format. Now, I was able to visit the North Carolina Department of Treasury's website, and I noted that there are a lot of counties reporting their monthly expenditures to the Department of Treasury, and we would like to make the reporting efforts easy for you. So if you can pull out the same information that we're requesting, and we only want the information for coronavirus relief expenditures, we're asking that you provide us a monthly report using the same format that you're providing to the local government commission and the North Carolina Department of Treasury. If you have more questions about that, feel free to email me, but we want to make reporting of this information as easy as possible. Also, in addition, we have provided a letter from the Office of State Budget that also mentions how you are to report these funds, but as Susan McCullen stated, the reporting for the local governments and the municipalities, that information was posted on the North Carolina Department of Treasury website. So we ask that you go out and look at that information for more information on how you are supposed to be reporting your coronavirus relief expenditures within the special fund. And finally, your monthly reports to NC Pro are due on the 20th of each month. On the days where the 20th falls on the weekend, it is due on the next day, which would be for September and December on the 21st. And finally, to close out the reporting requirements, and after all funds have been expended, we would ask that you send attachment F to report your counties and municipalities' outcomes and accomplishments. This final report, with the return of any unspent funds, will close out your reporting responsibilities to NC Pro. And this report should be submitted no later than January 31st, 2021. And we encourage that if you have any brochures or pictures or anything or images that you would like to share, we ask that you upload that information and make sure you name it with your agreement number, so that, and when we produce the final report to show how North Carolina handled this pandemic, we can actually put some nice pictures of your outcomes and accomplishments in the final report. And now we're going to open up this session for questions and answers.
Okay, Lisa, we have quite a few questions, and Some of these might be a little complicated as the law just kind of recently changed.
Okay.
So the first question, the U.S. Treasury guidance states that, quote, the Treasury Department would seek to recoup the funds from the government that received the payment directly from the Treasury Department, unquote. Can you clarify whether counties are responsible for paying back funds that may not be used by a municipality in compliance, or just that the counties will report the municipal plans?
Okay. Lisa Fox, do you want me to answer this one?
I'm
Sure.
available too.
Or Barbara may. Barbara just chimed in.
Okay, Barbara?
Yeah. So, yes, the federal guidance does state that the U.S. Treasury will claw it back from the state, but in the state session law that was passed, the state would be clawing it back from the county. That would leave the county responsible for ensuring compliance with any subrecipients, including the municipalities. So you're gonna have to make sure your municipalities are spending the monies appropriately, or the county will be responsible for paying that back to the state so we could pass that back through to the U.S. Treasury.
Okay, the next question. If municipalities are considered subrecipients, by definition, are required to abide by and follow appropriate expenditures and are reporting their own expenditures, why are counties on the hook for subrecipient misdeeds?
So I can manage that one too. I believe when Lisa was talking about reporting, she was just trying to save the counties. So the municipalities should be providing you their reports. But instead of one county loading up their report and maybe 10 municipalities, or maybe more, you can require your municipality to provide you the report and to submit it through the portal, so you don't have to do all those. It's up to each county to decide how they're going to do it. You can allow them to provide the report to you, to the county, and put it to the portal to NC Pro, or you could have all your municipalities provide it to you and you can input all of them into the portal. It's up to you on how you want to do it.
Okay, here's another one. If you are using CRF funds only for reimbursements for the nonprofits, do they still need to submit the C1, C2, and F documents to NC Pro?
Yes.
If we list an employee name/ID for a sick payment with CRF funds, would we violate HIPAA? Is there another way to relay this information in aggregate form?
Yes, you can relay it in aggregate form, and then when we actually, if we have to come and do an audit, we have the authority to look at that information and not violate HIPAA.
And we are going to be posting the PowerPoint and the recording of this on the website, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You said EFMLA must be formally adopted. Do you mean only leave deemed such after 4.1 per federal law?
So I'll take that. The Family First Coronavirus Act, that was passed and it provided special leave. It required any business or government with 500 people or less to adopt these new special leave categories and provide those and make those available to their employees. And so I don't know if you're less than 500 people, more than 500 people, but you should have adopted these and you should have provided these pots of money to your employees if they're, if you have less than 500 people. If you have more, you could have made a choice to adopt those and provided those special fund leave pots. And those are the leaves that are required that can be used for CFR, because since the federal government is mandated, you provide these kinds of leaves, and you have to have a policy in place that says we're providing this leave. We put it in place that was adopted by your county, and then you can use these funds. You can't institute it now because the funds are available. So I suppose you could if you wanted to, but you can't go back and pay people for things in the past.
Okay, next question. Why are the reports due 12/30 when you have until 12/30 to spend the money?
The reporting for December is due January 31st. It's always, the reporting due dates are always asked 1 month later.
Okay, next question. The NCLGC stated a special revenue fund was not required as long as these expenditures could be easily recognized. Is this a requirement, or is a special revenue fund recommended?
I would say that you need to look at the North Carolina State Treasurer's guidance. And if it was mandated by law per their website, then you have to account for these funds the way that they mandated.
Another question. Question about nonprofit grants. We have requests from nonprofits for funds to replace lost revenues. Not sure fundraising impacts qualify as helping, preventing, mitigating COVID. Is this eligible?
This is Barbara. I'm not quite sure I understand the question. You're giving money to a nonprofit and they want to use it to fundraise so they can raise more funds. I don't know how that relates to COVID.
But I also heard her say that some wanted to use it for revenue replacement.
And that's not allowed.
Right.
Okay. What was there a determination ever made whether telecommunicators, 9/11 employees' salaries are allowable?
I guess it's up to me. This is Barbara again. No, we're using the definition that we found in the IRS, and it doesn't include them. But if you can stand firm on a justification why they should be, and you have the documentation, and you think you can just justify it to a federal auditor, you can go ahead and use those funds for that. There are better ways to use those funds on your other law enforcement, public health employees that we know won't be questionable. But at this point, we don't know if that would be a questionable cost if the federal auditors came out.
I would say that if you choose to use your funds in that manner, and if you have a specific description or reason or purpose for why you thought it was allowable, please upload that information to us so that we'll have it available should a federal auditor have a question.
When must counties send funds to municipality? Seems that it is before they submit plans, since they must return to counties if they do not submit a plan by deadline.
Well, the law is silent to that. It doesn't say when the county has to provide the funds to the municipality. It doesn't say the county has to advance the funds. It doesn't say the county has to do it on a reimbursement basis. I think that's up to the county and the municipalities. I mean, it does say the municipality can wait until September 1, and if they don't provide a plan to you, then they don't get the funds, and they should return them if you provided any funds. So the law's silent to that, and we haven't, and this law hasn't even been signed by the governor, by the way. So we haven't really sat down and provided any guidance in that area. So it's something we gladly accept some feedback from the counties on how they feel about that. but right now there's really no guidance. Unless anybody else has an opinion on that.
No, I think that makes sense, Barbara. Thank you.
Another question. I understand the county determines the amount municipalities receive within a county. Do we notify them of that amount, share the guidance on how it must be spent, and then request their plans? Will NC Pro be reaching out to them?
Okay, so this.
Oh, go ahead, Barbara.
Go ahead, Nate. You can answer this one.
Okay, so all the funds are still going to flow through the county. So the plans that the county originally submitted, the idea is that there's basically the counties will have when they choose to when the funds are filtered down to the municipalities are then going to provide similar type plans to the county. The funds would then flow through the county. So any funds. It makes sense for a county to ask of the municipalities they're going to receive funds to make sure that they have those plans up front that show where the funding is going to go within the approved categories. That only makes sense. The actual contacts between the NC Pro office are between the county and the NC Pro office. The municipalities are to contact the counties for additional or follow-up questions. Certainly the counties can reference, or certainly the municipalities can reference information on the website, but the appropriation is to the counties, not to the municipalities individually.
So I just want to confirm, because there's many questions about this, the municipalities submit their information to the counties and then the counties forward it to NC Pro. Is that correct?
That's one option.
That's one option. The counties can also just send their download and upload links to the municipalities, and they can upload their information directly, and we will receive the information.
Okay.
But the counties should also ask the municipalities for the information also.
Yeah.
Right.
They're responsible for their spend.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that leads to this next question here. It says county managers were told that we would not be responsible for the clawbacks on behalf of municipalities if they misspend the funds. This said, we are now responsible for making sure they would spend it correctly. Will municipalities have to submit their plan documentation, including their plans, to counties? Otherwise, we will not have any way of assuring that.
Yes, the municipality should provide the plans to the county and to NC Pro. Either the county can forward the plans in once they think their plans are viable and the areas they're spending on are allowable, or they might want to help the municipalities rework their plan. And then after that, submit them in. But the plans should be provided to the counties, of course.
Okay, so next question. The reporting from AFIR that was shown on the slide is annual reporting that is done for annually. The units do not routinely report to us monthly. Oh, that was just a comment there.
Right, and let me make a comment on that.
Oh, that was from, sorry, that was from Susan.
Okay, thank you. And I want to make a comment on that. What I'm asking for is, since that extract exists, since there is ability to provide your information in that format, if you're able to get that same information and have it sent to us on a monthly basis, we're asking that you use that so that it can lessen your burden, your reporting burdens. It's my understanding that the CIOs have worked with the counties to come up with a standardized format for reporting monthly expenditures. And what we're asking for is, can the CIOs work with you again to give us the coronavirus relief expenditures in the similar format that could be submitted to NC Pro?
Treasury guidance allows CRF funds to be used to administer CRF payments. Does this include costs to the local government for managing and reporting CFR expenditures similar to FEMA CATZ reimbursement? NC Pro guidance states that there is no allowances for administration costs.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Sure. Treasury guidance allows CRF funds to be used to administer CRF payments. Does this include costs to the local government for managing and reporting CFR expenditures, similar to FEMA CATZ reimbursements?
So that's going to depend. Since these are not FEMA funds and they're CRF funds, the employee, if they have to hire a new employee to manage these funds, do the reporting, ensure compliance, then yes, because they're adding a new individual just to focus on that. But if they have a grants person that administers grants that are received, and that person is going to do it, then no, because it's substantially the same job. Remember from earlier presentations that we provided, it has to be the person has to be substantially dedicated to working on COVID and doing a substantially different use. So if that grant person is now just doing a grant that they're receiving from the county related to CRF, it's still grant work, so it wouldn't count. But if they have to hire additional person to do this work, it would count. Or if they decide to repurpose their internal auditor to manage these funds and ensure reporting requirements are being met and gathering the documents to support the expenses, that's a substantially different use. And then you could cover their payroll with that.
Okay, here's a question on utility bills. Utility bills have been past due amounts prior to March 1st. Are they eligible for reimbursement if they have to be paid to restore service?
No. If your county or municipality is the owner of the utility company, that's revenue replacement. If you want to give individual grants if you want to give grants to individuals to pay their utility bills, then you can open up a grant program to do that. And then you'd give that person the money and then they could go pay their utility bill. But you can't use these monies to pay the utility bill directly because it looks like revenue replacement.
Session Law 2020-4 states, quote, counties and municipalities are liable to the state, not just that counties are liable to the state. Can you comment on that? Lord.
I think we need to get back to you with an answer on that. I'm not sure what you're looking for in terms of a comment around liability, but we need to think through that some more before we provide feedback.
Will municipal funds come to the county? So, oh, this one we already answered that. Yes, it will. Our health department documents all time dedicated to COVID, and are they eligible or must it equate to greater than 50% of their time?
Sam, could you reread that again?
Yeah.
Sure. Our health department documents all time dedicated to COVID. Are they eligible or must it equate to greater than 50% of their time?
So health department, public health employees automatically are substantially dedicated. So they're already covered. It's the administrative staff that are not covered. And if they're doing the same thing, even though it's related to COVID, it would never be covered. If they're redirected to do substantially different use than what they typically do, and it's related to COVID, then it would be covered.
And administrative personnel in this case would be somebody like a clerk, a town clerk, or a secretary. That's what we mean by administrative.
Okay, someone wanted to have clarification on the identification numbers. They wanted to know who is assigning the municipality documentation identification number. Is it NC Pro or is it the county? So they just kind of wanted to have that clarified.
It's the counties. So NC Pro has already assigned an agreement number to the counties, but we do not know all of the municipalities within a county, and that is going to be the county's responsibility to divvy out. Let's say if they have 100, it would be, you know, their agreement number, and then you would append 1 through 100 and assign it to your subrecipients.
Okay. And it was saying here, it's will you invite the municipalities to a similar session to explain their responsibilities under this new guidance?
Yes, if requested, and you could send that email to lisa.outlaw@osbm.nc.gov, and we could set up another session, information session.
And someone asked if you could give more detail about the new guidance for the salaries and what are the differences than how it was stated before.
So the difference is the prior guidance said if your employee is working substantially dedicated 50% or more, you can only charge that percent of time they're working on COVID. The U.S. Treasury put out new guidance on June 24th that said if they're substantially dedicated, no matter how much time, as long as they're substantially dedicated, the full amount of their payroll could be covered. And that's the difference.
Someone asked, can we use the second allocation of CARES Act funds for revenue replacement?
No.
Someone wanted some clarification. With the counties being held liable/responsible for municipal expenses as the primary recipients, this will require interlocal agreements. For clarification, are counties restricted from appropriating funds to the municipalities via a reimbursement process?
So the session law is silent as to how you're going to provide those funds to your municipalities. And it's up to each county to decide how they're going to provide those funds to their municipalities.
Okay, question here. Will the municipal funds go, oh, here it went through the counties. We already answered that. This one says, we have implemented a grant program for small businesses and nonprofits to provide assistance purchasing PPE and have recently received a request for a grant from a church. Are churches allowed to receive grants with these funds?
It's not the entity receiving the funds, it's how the funds are going to be used. So I'm not sure how a church would use these funds. If they're going to use it to feed individuals who have lost their jobs, and that you could use it for that. But if they're going to use it because they're not providing in-person services and donations are down and they're trying to use it to replace that, they can't do that. So it depends on the activity, not the entity.
Can emergency management and public health directors' payroll be covered under payroll expenses even though this is their actual job?
Yes. Public safety and public health positions were defined by the U.S. Treasury as automatically and presumed to be substantially dedicated to remediating and responding to coronavirus. Therefore, they can be covered by these funds.
Susan McKellen from the Treasurer's Office also wanted to give out word to everybody. If you have a situation where you are considering not using a special revenue fund, she would like you to please contact her at susan.mccullen@nctreasurer.com. That's SUSAN.MCCULLEN@nctreasurer.com. And we have time for one more question and then we'll wrap it up. If there's many questions here, so whatever we don't get to, we will put together a frequently asked questions and we will post that on the website for you to go through and read and see the answers. Our health department employees' salaries are covered in our budget under a variety of funding sources, not just local general fund money. If we wish to claim their salaries for CRF reimbursement, do we need to track where each portion of their salary was originally being funded from?
Well, that's a good question. I would say if they're funded from other federal funds, then you definitely couldn't use these federal funds to replace it because there is a restriction on duplication of benefits. If they're funded from receipts, that would be a duplication of benefits. So it's really only going to be those kind of unrestricted funds you have, your county funds, general funds, that you can use these for, because you're not allowed to do duplication of benefits.
Okay, and Lisa, do you have any closing remarks, or Nate or Lisa Fox, for our audience today?
We're just asking if you have general questions. You can submit your questions to ncpro@osbm.nc.gov. We have the slide listed, and also a copy of this presentation will be located at our ncpro.nc.gov website, and you will go click on the counties, the link for counties, to access this presentation.